Ethan Ryder stood frozen in the hallway, his hand still on the doorknob, watching a woman in a $15,000 coat get cornered by a man holding a phone like a loaded weapon. The man's voice was soft, almost gentle. "One click, Olivia. That's all it takes. Your investors see those photos, your merger dies, and you spend the next year explaining how the brilliant CEO got so stupid." Ethan had come to fix a gaming rig. He'd walked into something else entirely. The woman's eyes met his, desperate, calculating, trapped. And Ethan realized, with the sinking certainty of someone who'd spent years reading threats and lines of code, that whatever happened in the next 60 seconds would change everything. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's get into it. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and someone's failed attempt at cooking pasta. Ethan had his toolkit spread across Derek's kitchen counter, a motherboard sitting between takeout containers and yesterday's mail. His best friend hovered nearby, anxious in that particular way people got when their computers stopped working and they realized how much of their lives lived inside broken machines. "I don't get it," Derek said for the third time. "It was fine yesterday. I was playing, everything was smooth, then this morning, nothing, just black screen." Ethan didn't look up from the circuit board. "You clicked something you shouldn't have." "I didn't click anything." "Everyone clicks something." Ethan pulled a magnifying glass from his bag, studying the capacitors near the GPU slot. "That's how this works. Someone sends you a link that looks normal. You click it. 3 weeks later, your computer dies and you call me." Derek shifted his weight, guilty. There might have been an email. There's always an email. It was past 9 on a Thursday night, and Ethan should have been home. His daughter Mia was at his mother's place for the evening, which meant he had maybe 4 hours of freedom before the familiar weight of single parenthood settled back onto his shoulders. 4 hours to fix Derek's computer, bill him for the work, and get back to his warehouse loft in Red Hook before the exhaustion caught up. He'd been doing this dance for 3 years now, ever since Sarah died and left him holding a 2-year-old and a pile of medical bills that made his freelance cybersecurity work feel less like a choice and more like the only option that let him keep Mia close. The corporate jobs paid better, sure, but they wanted you in an office 50 hours a week, and you couldn't raise a kid from a cubicle in Midtown. "How bad is it?" Derek asked. "Won't know until I run diagnostics. Could be hardware, could be something deeper." Ethan reconnected the power supply and hit the button. The machine hummed to life, fans spinning, and for a moment it looked like maybe Derek had just gotten lucky with a loose connection. Then Ethan saw the network monitor spike. It wasn't much, just a flicker on the screen he'd connected for diagnostics, a tiny burst of outbound traffic that shouldn't have been there. Most people would have missed it entirely. But Ethan had spent the better part of a decade learning to spot the things that didn't belong, the digital fingerprints that meant someone was where they shouldn't be. He opened a terminal window, fingers moving fast across the keyboard. Derek started to say something, and Ethan held up one hand, silencing him. The network traffic was trying to tunnel out through an encrypted connection, piggyback riding on Derek's home router, reaching for something outside. "You've got company," Ethan said quietly. "What?" "Someone's in your network, right now." He pulled up the connection logs, tracing the signal back through layers of proxy servers. "They're using your machine as a relay point. Probably don't even care about your data. They just want the bandwidth." Derek's face went pale. "Can you stop it?" "Already did." Ethan killed the process and blocked the ports, watching the traffic die. But something about the whole thing felt wrong. The intrusion was too sloppy, too easy to catch. Like someone had set it up in a hurry and hadn't bothered to cover their tracks properly. He was running a deeper scan when he heard voices in the hallway outside. Not conversation, an argument. Derek heard it too. "That's apartment 4B, he said. "Nobody's lived there in like 6 months." The voices got louder. A man, calm and controlled. A woman, trying to sound calm and failing. Then something hit the wall hard enough to rattle Derek's kitchen cabinets. Ethan was moving before he made the conscious decision to move. Muscle memory from years of being the person who checked on things that sounded wrong. He crossed Derek's apartment in 4 strides and pulled open the door. The hallway was empty except for 2 people standing outside 4B. The woman looked like she'd walked off the cover of a business magazine. Expensive coat, designer bag, the kind of shoes that cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. Mid-30s, probably. Dark hair pulled back tight, makeup perfect despite the late hour. But her eyes gave her away. She looked cornered. The man blocking her path was smaller, wiry, wearing jeans and a leather jacket that probably cost as much as the woman's coat. He had his phone out, held at an angle like he was showing her something on the screen. "One click, Olivia," he was saying. "That's all it takes. Your investors see those photos, your merger dies, and you spend the next year explaining how the brilliant CEO got so stupid." Ethan watched the woman, Olivia, calculate her options in real time. He recognized that look. He'd seen it before, on people who just realized their entire digital life had been turned into a weapon against them. "Marcus, please." Her voice was steady, but the cracks were starting to show. "Please what? Please don't send the files to the Times. Please don't leak your private acquisition plans to your competitors?" Marcus smiled, and it was the worst kind of smile. "You think I'm bluffing? That's cute." Ethan stepped fully into the hallway. "Everything okay out here?" Both of them turned to look at him. Olivia's expression flickered through surprise, hope, and then something that looked like embarrassment. Marcus just looked annoyed. "We're fine," Marcus said. "Private conversation." Didn't sound private. Ethan moved closer, putting himself between Marcus and the woman. He wasn't a big guy, 6 foot even, average build, but he knew how to make himself inconvenient. Sounded like someone needs to leave. Marcus studied him for a moment, doing the mental math people always did when they realized someone else was in the equation. "Who the hell are you?" "Friend of the building. This isn't your business. You're in the hallway making threats. That's everybody's business." Ethan looked past Marcus to Olivia. "You want him here?" She hesitated, just for a second, but that second told Ethan everything he needed to know. "No," she said quietly. "I don't." Marcus laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "You think this guy's gonna help you? You think he changes anything?" He held up his phone again. "I've got automated backups, Olivia. Dead man's switch. Anything happens to me, anything happens to my accounts, everything goes public automatically. You can't stop it. You can't fix it. And you definitely can't intimidate it." "I'm not trying to intimidate anyone," Ethan said. "I'm just suggesting you leave." "Or what?" Ethan didn't answer. He'd learned a long time ago that silence made people more nervous than threats. He just stood there, blocking the hallway, waiting. Marcus stared at him for another few seconds, then looked back at Olivia. "You've got 48 hours. After that, I start releasing files. Your choice how public you want this to get." He pocketed his phone and stepped around Ethan, heading for the stairwell. "Nice meeting you, friend of the building." They waited until the stairwell door closed. Then Olivia's shoulders dropped half an inch, and Ethan saw just how hard she'd been working to hold herself together. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to—" "Yeah, I did." Ethan nodded toward Derek's apartment. "You want to come inside? Figure out what just happened?" She looked at Derek's open door, then back at Ethan, still calculating. "You're a stranger. So's the guy who just threatened you." That got a thin smile. "Fair point." She followed him inside, moving carefully, like someone who'd learned not to trust spaces they hadn't cleared first. Derek was standing in his kitchen, holding a beer and looking profoundly uncomfortable. Hey." "This is Derek," Ethan said. "I'm fixing his computer. I'm Ethan." "Olivia Hart." She said it like she expected the name to mean something. When neither of them reacted, she looked almost relieved. He wasn't joking about the files, about any of it. "I figured." Ethan sat down at Derek's kitchen counter, pulling his laptop closer. "You want to tell me what he's got?" Olivia hesitated. The kind of hesitation that meant she was used to keeping secrets, used to controlling information, and now she had to decide whether to trust someone she'd met 60 seconds ago. "Photos," she said finally, "from 2 years ago, when Marcus and I were together. Nothing illegal, but intimate, and confidential documents from my company. Merger plans, acquisition targets, internal financials, things that would destroy us if they became public." "How'd he get them?" "I gave him access to my phone, to my email, to everything." Her voice went flat, angry at herself. "I was stupid." "You trusted someone. That's not stupid." Ethan opened a terminal window. The files, they're definitely still in his possession. Yes, and like he said, they're automated. If I go to the police, if I try to fight back, everything releases automatically. He showed me the system. It's real. Derek cleared his throat. So what, you do what he wants? That's what he's counting on. Olivia's hands were shaking slightly. She noticed and clenched them into fists. He wants money. A lot of it. And he wants me to tank the merger I've been building for 8 months, kill the deal, blame it on market conditions, walk away from $2 billion in shareholder value. Ethan looked up from his laptop. Why? What does he get out of killing your deal? Revenge, control, the satisfaction of watching me lose. She laughed, brittle. We dated for 11 months. I ended it when I realized he was more interested in my company than me. He didn't take it well. Nobody ever does. Ethan ran a tracer on the network intrusion he'd caught earlier, watching the data flow backward through proxy servers and encrypted tunnels. The network breach I found on Derek's computer, it's connected to your building's Wi-Fi. Someone's been using it as a relay point. Olivia's face went white. He's been in my network. Probably still is. Ethan pulled up a map showing the signal pathways. He's routing traffic through here, through 3 other apartments in this building, bouncing it all over the city. Classic diffusion tactic. Makes it harder to trace back to the source. Can you stop it? I can slow it down. But if what he said is true, if he's got a dead man's switch set up, then cutting off his access might trigger the release. Ethan looked at her directly. This isn't just tech. This is leverage. And leverage means he's vulnerable. How? Because leverage only works if you believe it. Ethan closed his laptop. He showed you the system, proved it was real. That means he needs you to be scared. But automated systems fail. Backups corrupt. Dead man switches require maintenance. Nothing's perfect, especially when someone builds it in a hurry to threaten an ex-girlfriend. Olivia studied him for a long moment. You sound like you've done this before. I've seen variations. Corporate espionage, IP theft, blackmail. It's all the same pattern. Someone gets access to something valuable and decides to weaponize it. He stood up, stretching his back. The question is whether you want to fight back or pay him off. I don't want to pay him. Good. Because paying never stops it. It just teaches them you're willing to pay. Derek had been quiet through all of this, but now he spoke up. Dude, this sounds illegal. Like, seriously illegal. It is illegal, Ethan said, but going to the cops means gambling that they can stop the release before it happens. And in my experience, law enforcement is great at prosecution, not so great at prevention. Olivia's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her expression went cold. He just sent me a file. A preview. She turned the phone around and Ethan saw a photo. Nothing explicit, but intimate enough. And a caption. First of many, 47 hours. He's counting down, Derek said unnecessarily. Ethan took the phone from Olivia's hand, studying the image properties. He sent this from his phone, which means he's got local copies, not just cloud storage. That's a mistake. How is that a mistake? Because local storage is vulnerable. Cloud backups are distributed, encrypted, hard to touch without leaving traces. But files on a device? Those I can work with. He handed the phone back. You need somewhere to stay tonight, somewhere he doesn't know about. I have a hotel. Hotels keep records. Credit cards leave trails. If Marcus is serious about this, he's already tracking your movements. Ethan looked at Derek. You mind if she crashes here tonight? Derek's eyes went wide. Here? In my apartment? Just for one night, until we figure out what we're dealing with. I can't, Olivia started. You can, and you should. Ethan grabbed his toolkit, packing up the computer repair job he'd started 100 years ago, before everything got complicated. Marcus thinks you're isolated. That's his advantage. So we take that away. You stay here, stay offline, and I go home and start pulling apart his network. You don't even know me. I know enough. He zipped up his bag. You walked into an ambush and tried to negotiate. That means you're smart. But smart people make bad decisions when they're scared. So right now you need to stop being scared and start being angry. I am angry. Then use it. He handed her a business card with his phone number. I'll call you tomorrow morning. Don't contact anyone from your company. Don't use your credit cards. Don't do anything that creates a digital footprint. Pretend you're off the grid." She took the card, turning it over in her hands. "Why are you helping me?" Ethan thought about that. About Sarah. About Mia. About the 100 small ways his life had become unrecognizable after loss. About how easy it was to walk past people who needed help because helping them meant complicating your own carefully managed survival. "Because someone should," he said, "and I'm already here." He left before she could argue, taking the stairs down to the street. The rain had started, light but persistent, turning the Brooklyn pavement into a mirror of brake lights and neon. He walked the 8 blocks to his loft, mind already working through the problem. Marcus Kane. That was the name Olivia had used. Ethan pulled out his phone and started searching while he walked. Social media first. Everyone left traces there. He found Marcus in under a minute. Tech consultant, entrepreneur, investor. The kind of professional profile that said nothing and everything. 4,200 followers, mostly other tech people and investors. Posts about disruption and innovation and the future of something. Ethan dug deeper. Business registrations, LLC filings, old news articles. Marcus had started 3 companies in the last 5 years. All of them had failed. And all of them had failed right around the time they were supposed to go public or get acquired. That was the pattern. Marcus built things up, got them close to success, then crashed them deliberately. Insurance fraud, probably. Or shorting his own stock. Either way, it explained why he wanted Olivia's merger dead. If he couldn't build something successful, he'd make sure nobody else could either. The loft was dark and cold when Ethan got home. He'd bought the space 2 years ago, back when warehouses in Red Hook were still almost affordable. 1,500 square feet of exposed brick and industrial windows, with Mia's room sectioned off in one corner and his workspace spread across the rest. Servers humming quietly in the corner, monitors dark until he woke them up. He made coffee and sat down at his main terminal. The network intrusion from Derek's apartment was his way in. Marcus had been sloppy, routing traffic through residential Wi-Fi without properly covering his tracks. That meant Ethan could follow the signal backward, hop by hop, until he found the source. It took 4 hours. By 2 in the morning, he'd traced the connection to a commercial building in Newark. By 3, he'd identified the server farm. By 4, he was inside Marcus's network, moving through directories like a ghost, cataloging everything. The blackmail system was exactly as sophisticated as Olivia had described. Encrypted storage, automated triggers, dead man switches tied to Marcus's login patterns. If Marcus didn't check in every 12 hours, the system would assume he'd been compromised and release everything. Photos, documents, emails, all of it time-stamped and ready to go to a distribution list that included journalists, investors, competitors, and, just for spite, Olivia's entire company mailing list. Ethan sat back, rubbing his eyes. This wasn't something you could just delete. The system was designed to survive exactly that kind of attack. Cutting the power would trigger the release. Corrupting the data would trigger the release. Even accessing the files without the right credentials would trigger the release. Marcus had built a perfect trap. Except Ethan didn't believe in perfect traps. Every system had vulnerabilities. Every automation required maintenance. And every person who built something this elaborate made mistakes because they were so focused on the big picture that they missed the details. He spent another hour mapping Marcus's network, learning its rhythms, watching how the data moved. And then he saw it. The mistake. Marcus was backing everything up to a secondary server in New Jersey. Not cloud storage. Physical drives in a data center, probably rented under a shell company. And the backups were running on a schedule. Every 6 hours, the system would copy all the blackmail files to the Jersey location, encrypting them in transit but leaving them briefly accessible during the transfer. 6 hours. That was the window. Ethan checked the timestamp on the last backup. It had run at midnight, which meant the next one would run at 6 a.m. He had 2 hours to build an intercept. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Then he realized it was Olivia, using a burner phone or Derek's line. "Can't sleep. Is this normal?" He typed back. "Yes. Fear makes your brain think it needs to stay alert for threats. That doesn't help?" "Not supposed to help, just supposed to be true." A pause. Then, "Did you find anything?" "Maybe. I'll know more in the morning. Try to rest." I'm sitting in a stranger's apartment hiding from my ex-boyfriend who's threatening to destroy my company. Rest feels optimistic. Ethan almost smiled. Fair point. He put the phone down and went back to work. The intercept had to be surgical. Touch the files during transfer, copy them, corrupt the originals, then let the corrupted versions complete the backup cycle. If he did it right, Marcus wouldn't know anything had happened until he tried to access the Jersey backup and found garbage data. But that only solved half the problem. Marcus still had the original files on his primary server, and he still had the dead man's switch. Taking out the backup wouldn't stop the release. Ethan needed something else. Leverage of his own. He went back through Marcus's network, this time looking for anything personal. Email accounts, financial records, browsing history. Everyone had secrets. The question was whether Marcus's secrets were valuable enough to trade. He found the first hint at 4:30 in the morning. An email chain Marcus hadn't deleted, buried in an archive folder. Correspondence with a hedge fund manager about shorting a biotech stock 3 days before the company announced clinical trial failures. Insider trading, if you could prove Marcus had advanced knowledge of the failure. Ethan kept digging. More emails, more patterns. Marcus wasn't just blackmailing Olivia. He'd been running variations of the same scam for years. Different victims, different leverage, same basic formula. Get close to someone successful, gain access to their sensitive information, then weaponize it. And Marcus had kept records of everything, probably for his own insurance, proof that he could take other people down if they came after him. But insurance worked both ways. By the time the sun started coming up, Ethan had built a file that could put Marcus in federal prison for the next decade. Securities fraud, wire fraud, extortion, computer crimes, page after page of evidence, all pulled from Marcus's own carefully maintained archives. His phone rang. Olivia, calling from Derek's number. "I couldn't wait," she said. "Tell me you found something." "I found everything." Ethan saved his work and closed the laptop. "He's been doing this for years. You're just the latest target, and he kept records." "What kind of records?" "The kind that mean he's more worried about us than we are about him. Or he will be once he realizes we have them." Ethan stood up, joints cracking from sitting too long. "I need to pick up my daughter in an hour. Can you meet me after lunch? There's a coffee shop in Dumbo. Neutral ground, public space. We'll figure out next steps." "What are next steps?" "Depends on what you want. We can take this to the FBI, let them build a case. That's the safe option. Or we can use what I found to force Marcus to back off, take the blackmail leverage away from him directly. That's the fast option." "What's the difference?" "Time, mostly. FBI means months of investigation, testimony, trials. You'd win, but Marcus's files might leak anyway during the process. Fast option means we confront him, show him we've got enough to destroy his life, and make him realize he's better off walking away." Olivia was quiet for a moment. "The fast option sounds riskier." "It is, but risk might be better than waiting for him to release your files anyway." "And you'd do this? Help me confront him?" "I'm already in this," Ethan said. "Might as well see it through." He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, working through the decision. This was the moment where she either trusted him or didn't, where she decided whether he was someone who could actually help or just another person making promises he couldn't keep. "Okay," she said finally. "Coffee shop in Dumbo. Send me the address." "I will." "And Olivia, don't tell anyone where you are or what we're doing. Not your lawyers, not your board. Nobody. The fewer people who know, the smaller the target." "I understand." "Good. See you at 1. He hung up and stood there in his empty loft, watching the morning light cut through the industrial windows. Mia would be awake soon, demanding breakfast and cartoons and the 1,000 small rituals that made up their life together. He needed to shower, eat something, pretend to be normal for a few hours. But his mind was already back in Marcus's network, walking through the architecture of the trap, looking for the one piece that would make the whole thing collapse. Because Ethan Ryder had spent 3 years building secure systems and protecting people's data for a living. And the one thing he knew for certain was that nothing, not even a perfect blackmail scheme, was truly unbreakable. You just had to know where to press. Ethan picked up Mia from his mother's house at 9 And she spent the entire drive back to the loft telling him about the cartoon she'd watched and the pancakes she'd eaten and how Grandma had let her stay up past bedtime. She was 4 years old and believed the entire world existed to listen to her observations, which meant Ethan spent most mornings nodding and saying, "Really?" while his brain worked on problems she'd never understand. Today the problem was how to dismantle a blackmail operation without getting arrested or shot. "Daddy, you're not listening." He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I am listening. You said the pancakes had blueberries." "That was 5 minutes ago. Now I'm talking about the cat." "Right, the cat. Grandma says we should get a cat." "Grandma says a lot of things." He pulled into the loading zone behind his building, lifting Mia out of her car seat. She wrapped her arms around his neck and he carried her upstairs, her weight familiar and grounding. This was real. Everything else, Olivia, Marcus, the digital war he'd been fighting since midnight, that was the abstraction. He made eggs while Mia played with blocks in the living room, building towers and knocking them down, narrating an elaborate story about princesses and dragons that seemed to change rules every 30 seconds. The normalcy of it felt surreal after the night he'd had, like he'd stepped through a door into someone else's routine. His phone buzzed. Text from Derek. "She left an hour ago. Said to tell you thanks. Also, dude, what the hell did I get involved in?" Ethan typed back. "Nothing you need to worry about. I'll explain later." That's not reassuring. Not supposed to be reassuring, supposed to be true. He fed Mia, cleaned up the kitchen, and tried to act like a normal father doing normal things. But his laptop sat on the counter, closed but humming, servers in the corner still running traces on Marcus's network. He'd set up automated monitoring before he left, programs that would alert him if Marcus accessed his blackmail files or made any sudden moves. So far, nothing. Which either meant Marcus was sleeping in or he was planning something Ethan couldn't see yet. At 12:30, Ethan's mother showed up to watch Mia for the afternoon. She stood in the doorway with her purse clutched tight, looking at him the way she'd been looking at him for 3 years, like he might break if she stopped paying attention. "You look tired," she said. "I'm always tired." "You look worse than usual." She came inside, setting her purse on the counter next to his laptop. "You sleeping?" "Some." "That means no." She found Mia in the living room and scooped her up, and Mia shrieked with delight. "You're working too much." "I'm working enough to pay rent." "Oh, you're working too much," she repeated, firmer this time. "That child needs a father who's present, not just physically here." Ethan didn't have the energy to argue. "I've got a meeting. I'll be back by 5. "What kind of meeting?" "Client meeting, potential long-term contract." That was technically true, depending on how you defined client and contract. His mother studied him, trying to decide if he was lying. Then she sighed and let it go, because that's what they did now. After Sarah died, they'd all learned to let things go rather than push too hard and risk the fragile structure collapsing. "Be careful," she said. "Always am." He kissed Mia goodbye and left before his mother could ask more questions. The subway into Dumbo took 40 minutes, and he spent the entire ride reviewing everything he'd pulled from Marcus's network. The evidence was solid. Maybe not perfect for a criminal trial, but enough to scare someone who thought they were untouchable. The coffee shop was one of those Brooklyn places that tried too hard to look like it wasn't trying. Exposed brick, reclaimed wood tables, baristas with elaborate facial hair. Ethan ordered black coffee and found a table in the corner with a view of the door. Old habit from his corporate security days. Always know who's coming in. Olivia arrived 15 minutes late, wearing different clothes than last night, but the same careful expression. She'd pulled her hair back into a ponytail and swapped the designer coat for something more anonymous, but she still looked like someone who didn't belong in a neighborhood coffee shop. Too polished, too expensive. She sat down across from him without ordering anything. "You look better," Ethan said. "I feel worse." She put her phone on the table, screen down. "Derek's apartment smells like old socks and his shower has 2 settings, scalding and frozen. I got maybe 3 hours of sleep. 3's better than 0. Is that what you got? 0? Close enough?" He opened his laptop, angling it so she could see the screen. "I spent the night in Marcus's network. He's got a whole operation running. Not just blackmail, fraud, insider trading, corporate espionage. He's been doing this for years." Olivia leaned forward, scanning the documents. Her expression shifted from exhausted to focused in seconds, and Ethan saw the CEO emerge. This was the person who ran a company, who made decisions that affected thousands of people. Last night she'd been cornered and desperate. Today she looked dangerous. "How much of this is admissible?" she asked. "Legally? Probably none of it. I accessed his systems without authorization, which makes it fruit of the poisonous tree." He scrolled through the files. "But admissible doesn't matter if we're not going to court. What's the alternative? We make him more afraid of us than we are of him." Ethan pulled up the file he'd built overnight, 50 pages of Marcus's crimes, organized and cross-referenced. He thinks he's got all the leverage. We show him he doesn't. We show him we can destroy his life just as easily as he can destroy yours, and then we negotiate. That sounds like extortion. It is extortion, but it's extortion in self-defense, which makes it... He paused. Actually, it's still extortion, but it's effective extortion. Olivia almost smiled. "You're very honest about doing illegal things." "I found people appreciate clarity." He closed the laptop. "But this only works if you're willing to get your hands dirty. If you want to stay clean, we go to the FBI and let them handle it. That's slower and messier, but it's legal." "How much slower?" "Months? Maybe a year. And during that time, Marcus might panic and release everything anyway." She sat back, arms crossed. "What's your success rate on things like this?" "Things like this? First time?" He saw her expression shift and added, "But I've dealt with corporate espionage before. IP theft, network intrusions, ransomware. The tactics are the same. Someone has something they shouldn't, and you need to take it back without making things worse. That's not exactly comforting." "I'm not here to be comforting. I'm here to solve the problem." A barista called out someone's order, and they both instinctively looked toward the counter. Then Olivia turned back to him, and her voice dropped lower. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. And this..." She gestured at the laptop. "This could get you arrested." Ethan had been asking himself the same question since 4 a.m. Why get involved? Why risk everything he'd built? The fragile stability, the carefully managed life with Mia? For someone he'd met in a hallway? "My wife died 3 years ago," he said. "Cancer. She spent 8 months in hospitals while I tried to keep working and take care of Mia and pretend like everything was going to be fine. And the whole time I kept thinking someone should help us. Someone should step in and make this easier." "Did anyone?" "Some people, my mother, a few friends, but mostly we were on our own. And I learned that the world doesn't stop just because your life is falling apart. You either figure out how to keep moving or you drown." Olivia's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry, about your wife." "Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything." He opened the laptop again. "But I remember what it felt like to be trapped with no good options. So when I see someone else in that situation, and I can actually do something about it, yeah, I get involved." She studied him for a long moment. "You're either very kind or very stupid." "Probably both." This time she did smile, brief but real. Then the smile faded and the CEO came back. "Okay, let's say we do this your way. We confront Marcus, show him what we have. What's to stop him from releasing everything out of spite?" "Nothing, if he's stupid, but spite requires follow-through, and follow-through leaves evidence. If he releases your files after we show him, we can put him in prison. That's motive. That's prosecutor's dream material." Ethan pulled up a timeline he'd built. Right now, his dead man's switch gives him protection. But once we prove we're willing to fight back, that protection becomes a liability. Every move he makes after this conversation is documented. "You're gambling he's rational." "I'm gambling he's self-interested. Rational people do irrational things when they're scared. Self-interested people calculate costs." Olivia looked at the timeline, at the files, at Ethan's face. "When do we do this?" "Tomorrow. Tonight I need to finish building the case, make sure everything's airtight. Tomorrow we set up a meeting, public place, lots of witnesses, and we show him exactly how much trouble he's in." "He won't come. Not if he thinks it's a trap." "That's why you invite him. Tell him you're ready to negotiate. Tell him you'll pay whatever he wants, but you need to meet in person to discuss terms." Ethan closed the laptop. Men like Marcus, they can't resist the performance. He'll want to see your face when you admit he won. That's the hook. And then what? We just show him files and hope he backs off? We show him files and make him understand that backing off is his only option that doesn't end in federal prison. Then we give him a way out. He deletes everything, walks away, disappears from your life. In exchange, we don't turn over the evidence we have. That lets him go free. That lets you go free, Ethan corrected, which is the point. You want justice or you want your life back? Olivia didn't answer right away. She looked out the window at the Brooklyn street, at people walking past with their coffee and their normalcy and their uncomplicated Fridays. I want both, she said finally. Can't have both. Not in this scenario. Why not? Because putting him in prison means going through the legal system, which means your files become evidence, which means they become public record. You'd win the case and lose everything else. He leaned forward. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's reality. She turned back to him, and her eyes were harder now. What if I want him to suffer? Then we take a different approach. But suffering takes time and increases risk. Fast and clean means you get your life back. Slow and painful means you spend the next year watching him burn while your company gets dragged through the same fire. You've really thought this through. I spent all night thinking it through. A long silence stretched between them. Outside, a delivery truck double parked and started unloading crates. Someone's phone rang, and they answered it too loudly. The espresso machine screamed behind the counter. Okay, Olivia said. We do it your way. Tomorrow, public place, show him what we have. But I want insurance. What kind of insurance? The kind where if he releases my files anyway, we release his. Mutually assured destruction. He needs to know that hurting me means destroying himself. Ethan nodded slowly. I can set that up. Automated system, similar to his. If your files go public, his go to the FBI automatically. It's symmetrical. How long will that take? I can have it running by tonight. Then do it. She stood up, and Ethan noticed her hands weren't shaking anymore. Where do we meet him? Coffee shop in Manhattan, somewhere busy, anonymous. I'll scout locations this evening and send you options. He stood as well, picking up his laptop. Between now and then, you need to act normal. Go home. Go to work if you have work. Don't change your routine. If Marcus is watching you, we want him to think you're complying. I have a board meeting Monday morning. The merger vote is in 10 days. Then go to your board meeting. Play the part. We'll deal with Marcus before any of it matters. She hesitated, then reached out and touched his arm briefly. Thank you for this. For everything. Don't thank me yet. We haven't solved anything. You gave me options. Yesterday I didn't have options. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. They left the coffee shop separately, Olivia heading toward the subway and Ethan walking the opposite direction, circling the block twice to make sure nobody was following before he found his own train. He got back to the loft at 4:30. His mother was reading to Mia on the couch, and they both looked up when he came in. How was the meeting? His mother asked. Promising. Might turn into a long-term thing. Good. You need long-term. She stood up, gathering her things. Mia had a snack an hour ago. She needs dinner by 6 or she gets impossible. I know the schedule. Just reminding you. She kissed Mia goodbye, then paused at the door. You look less tired. Good coffee. That's not what I mean. She studied his face. You look, I don't know, present. Like you're actually here instead of just going through motions. Ethan didn't know how to respond to that. I'm fine, Mom. I know. That's what worries me. You're always fine. She left before he could argue. He spent the rest of the afternoon being a father. Played blocks with Mia, made dinner, supervised bath time, read 3 books before bed. The routine was so familiar it ran on autopilot, which meant part of his brain could stay focused on the Marcus problem. After Mia fell asleep, Ethan returned to his computers. Building the automated release system took 3 hours. Writing code, testing triggers, encrypting the data, setting up the fail-safes. It had to be perfect because imperfect meant either Marcus's evidence leaked prematurely or it didn't leak when it needed to. By midnight, he had it running. One system monitoring Olivia's files across the internet. Another ready to dump Marcus's crimes to the FBI if the monitoring system detected a breach. It was elegant in its simplicity. Mutually assured destruction, just like she'd asked for. He tested it twice, running simulations, making sure the triggers worked. Then he sent Olivia an encrypted message with the details. System is live. If he releases your files, his go public automatically. You're covered. She responded 5 minutes later. I haven't felt safe in 3 days. This is the closest I've gotten. Safe is relative, but you're safer than yesterday. Is that supposed to be encouraging? It's supposed to be accurate. He could almost hear her laugh through the text. You're terrible at reassurance. I'm a cybersecurity specialist, not a therapist. Maybe you should work on your bedside manner. I'll add it to the list. He paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then he typed, You doing okay? For real? The response took longer this time. I'm sitting in my apartment drinking wine and going through my company's financials because I can't sleep. So no, not particularly okay, but I'm functional, which is close enough. Functional counts. Does it? It's what I've got most days. Seems to work. Another pause, then, Your daughter, what's her name? Mia. How old? 4, almost 5. That's hard, doing it alone. Everything's hard. You just pick which hard you can live with. He looked at the photo on his desk. Sarah holding newborn Mia, both of them exhausted and perfect. She asked me about getting a cat today. Are you getting a cat? Probably not, but I'm letting her think we're considering it, which buys me 3 months before she asks again. This time Olivia did laugh. He could tell by the way the text came back. Strategic parenting. Only kind I know. They texted for another 20 minutes, the conversation drifting away from Marcus and blackmail and digital warfare. She asked about Mia, he asked about her company. She told him about the merger, 8 months of negotiations, $2 billion in shareholder value, her entire reputation riding on pulling it off. He told her about the time Mia had decided all her food needed to be purple, and he'd spent 3 days trying to figure out how to make purple chicken. It was normal, almost comfortable. Like they were two people who'd known each other longer than 48 hours. I should sleep, Olivia finally wrote. Big week ahead. Yeah, me too. Ethan? Yeah? Tomorrow when we meet Marcus. What if he doesn't believe us? What if he thinks we're bluffing? Ethan looked at his screens, at the evidence files, at the automated systems he'd built. Then we make him believe us, whatever it takes. That's still not reassuring. Good. You shouldn't feel reassured. You should feel ready. I don't feel ready. Nobody ever does. You just do it anyway. He sent the message and closed the laptop, suddenly exhausted. It was past 1 in the morning and he had to be up with Mia in 6 hours. But sleep felt impossible with everything spinning in his head. He checked on Mia, still asleep, sprawled across her bed like she'd fallen from a great height, then stood at the window looking out at Red Hook. The neighborhood was quiet, just the occasional car passing and the distant sound of the expressway. Somewhere in Manhattan, Marcus Kane was probably sleeping peacefully, confident in his leverage, certain that Olivia would break before he did. And somewhere else in the city, Olivia was sitting in her apartment wondering if she'd made the right choice trusting a stranger with her entire life. Ethan didn't know if he could deliver what he'd promised, didn't know if the plan would work, or if Marcus would see through it, or if the whole thing would collapse spectacularly. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't walking away. Not from this. Not from her. He'd spent 3 years walking away from everything that required emotional investment, protecting himself and Mia inside routines and boundaries. And maybe that was necessary after Sarah died. Maybe it was survival. But survival wasn't the same as living. His phone buzzed one more time. Olivia. Thank you for caring about someone else's problem. He typed back, It's not someone else's problem anymore. Then he went to bed, set his alarm, and tried to convince his brain to shut down for a few hours. Tomorrow, they'd confront Marcus. Tomorrow, they'd either solve this or make it catastrophically worse. Either way, he'd stopped being a bystander. And that had to count for something. The coffee shop Ethan chose was in Midtown, 3 blocks from Grand Central, the kind of place where business people stopped between meetings and nobody paid attention to anyone else's conversations. He got there 40 minutes early, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and watched the door while running through everything that could go wrong. Marcus could refuse to show up. Marcus could show up with lawyers. Marcus could show up with nothing to lose and trigger the release out of spite. Marcus could be smarter than Ethan gave him credit for and see through the entire setup. Or worse, Marcus could be exactly as smart as Ethan thought, and this could turn into a standoff that ended with both of them holding grenades with the pins pulled. His phone buzzed. "Olivia, I'm 2 blocks away. You sure about this?" "No, but we're doing it anyway." That's still not reassuring. You want reassuring? Hire a life coach. You want results? Trust me for the next hour. She didn't respond, which meant she was either furious or terrified or both. Ethan went back to watching the door and trying to ignore the way his pulse hammered in his throat. He'd done high-pressure work before. Corporate security meant diffusing situations where millions of dollars hung in the balance. But this was different. This was personal in a way that made his hands unsteady. Olivia came in first, wearing a business suit that probably cost more than Ethan's rent, her face carefully neutral. She spotted him, crossed the room, and sat down without saying anything. "You look official," Ethan said. "I have a board call in 2 hours. Figured I should dress the part." She set her phone on the table, screen up, showing the time. "He said he'd be here at 11. He'll be late. Men like him always are. It's a power move." "How do you know so much about men like him?" "I've worked with enough of them. Tech industry's full of people who think being clever means they're entitled to other people's things." He pulled out his laptop but didn't open it yet. "When he gets here, let me lead. He's expecting you to negotiate, which means seeing me will throw him off balance. What if he just leaves? Then we follow him outside and have the conversation on the street. But he won't leave. He's too curious." Ethan finally looked at her directly. "You ready for this?" "I don't know what ready feels like anymore." "That's normal. You just push through it anyway." She almost smiled. "You're very good at making terrible situations sound manageable." "It's a gift." They sat in silence for 8 minutes. Then Marcus walked in, wearing expensive jeans and a leather jacket, carrying himself like someone who'd never been told no in a way that stuck. He saw Olivia, started toward her table, then stopped when he noticed Ethan. "Who's this?" Marcus asked, his voice friendly but his eyes calculating. "Friend of the building," Ethan said. "We met the other night." "I remember." Marcus looked between them, working through scenarios. Then he smiled, and it was the same smile from the hallway, charming and threatening at once. "Olivia, I thought we were meeting alone." "Plans change," she said. Her voice was steady, but Ethan could see tension in her shoulders. "I don't do business with an audience." "Then don't do business. Leave." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "But before you go, you might want to hear what we found." Marcus hesitated. Curiosity versus caution, playing out across his face in real time. Finally, he pulled out a chair and sat down, positioning himself where he could see both of them. "This should be interesting," Marcus said. "You've got 5 minutes." Ethan opened his laptop, turning it so Marcus could see the screen. "You've been running blackmail operations for 6 years. 11 victims before Olivia, probably more we haven't found. You get close to successful people, gain access to their sensitive information, then weaponize it. Sometimes you want money. Sometimes you want them to tank their own companies so you can short the stock. Sometimes you just want control." Marcus's expression didn't change. "That's a nice story. You got proof?" "I've got your entire network, every server, every backup, every archive you thought was encrypted." Ethan pulled up a directory tree showing Marcus's file structure. "I've got emails between you and hedge fund managers discussing insider trades. I've got chat logs where you coordinated stock manipulation. I've got financial records showing payments from people you extorted. And I've got the blackmail files you're holding on Olivia, plus the automated release system you built. If you've got all that, you've committed about a dozen federal crimes accessing it." "Absolutely. But I'm not planning to use it in court. I'm planning to use it here, right now, to explain why you're going to delete everything you have on Olivia and walk away." Marcus laughed. It sounded genuine. "And why would I do that?" "Because if you don't, we send everything I just showed you to the FBI, the SEC, and every journalist who covers white-collar crime in New York. You'll be indicted within a week, convicted within 6 months. And you'll spend the next decade in a federal prison explaining to your cellmate how you were smart enough to blackmail a CEO, but too stupid to cover your tracks. The smile disappeared from Marcus's face. You're bluffing. I'm really not. Ethan pulled up a document, 50 pages of evidence, organized and annotated. This is just the summary. I've got 3 times this much in reserve. Every crime you committed, cross-referenced with dates, amounts, and witnesses. It's a prosecutor's fantasy. Marcus's jaw tightened. He looked at Olivia. You put him up to this. No, Olivia said quietly. He offered to help. I said yes. So you hired someone to hack me illegally, and now you think you've got leverage. Marcus leaned forward. Here's what you're missing. I've got a dead man's switch. Anything happens to me, anything happens to my systems, Olivia's files go public automatically. You can't touch me without destroying her first. That's true, Ethan said, which is why we built the same thing. If you release Olivia's files, yours go to the FBI automatically. Mutually assured destruction. You hurt her, you hurt yourself worse. Marcus stared at him. You're insane. I'm practical. You built a system that only works if your victim stays scared. We just made you the victim instead. Now neither of you can move without consequences, which means the only rational choice is to walk away. And if I don't, then we all lose. You go to prison, Olivia's reputation gets destroyed, and I probably get arrested for computer crimes. It's a bad outcome for everyone. Ethan closed the laptop. But here's the thing about bad outcomes. I can survive mine. I'm a freelance security specialist with a kid to raise. Worst case, I do 2 years in minimum security and my mother watches Mia while I'm gone. It's not ideal, but I'll manage. So? So you can't survive yours. You're 42 years old with a criminal record and no legitimate skills. You've spent the last 6 years burning bridges and making enemies. Prison doesn't just end your career, it ends your life as you know it. And when you get out, everyone you ever wronged will still be out here, remembering what you did. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the coffee shop continued its normal rhythm, espresso machines hissing, people ordering complicated drinks, the ambient noise of strangers living their uncomplicated lives. Nobody was paying attention to the 3 people in the corner negotiating the terms of mutually assured destruction. What do you want? Marcus asked finally. Delete everything, Olivia said. Every file, every backup, every copy you made, the photos, the merger documents, all of it, and shut down your automated release system. And if I do that, you let me walk? We let you walk, Ethan confirmed. We don't send the evidence to the FBI. We don't go public with what we found. You disappear from Olivia's life, and we pretend this conversation never happened. How do I know you won't come after me later? You don't. Same way we don't know you won't release the files anyway out of spite. Ethan leaned forward. That's why it's called mutually assured destruction. We both have to trust that the other person values survival more than revenge. Marcus looked at Olivia. You're really willing to let me go after everything? I'm willing to get my life back, she said. If that means you walk free, fine. I'll live with it. And what's to stop me from doing this to someone else? Building the same leverage, running the same game? Nothing, Ethan said. Except now I've got your entire operation documented. If you try this again with anyone else, if I even hear rumors that you're targeting someone, all of this goes public. You get one chance to disappear. After that, the deal's off. Marcus sat back, thinking. Ethan could see him running calculations, weighing risks against rewards, trying to find an angle that gave him back control. This was the critical moment, the point where Marcus either accepted that he'd lost or decided to burn everything down rather than admit defeat. I want assurances, Marcus said. What kind? I want proof that you'll actually delete the evidence files if I comply. I want a timeline for how long you'll keep monitoring me, and I want compensation for what I'm giving up. Ethan almost laughed. You want us to pay you? I'm walking away from a significant asset. The blackmail files alone are worth nothing if you're in prison, Olivia interrupted. You're not negotiating from a position of strength here, Marcus. You're negotiating from a position of please don't destroy my life. Now, there's a difference. Marcus's face flushed red. You think you're so much better than me? You built your company by stepping on people, taking credit for other people's work, pushing out anyone who questioned you.
The only difference between us is you had family money to start with. The difference between us, Olivia said, and her voice was ice, is that I built something. You just tear things down and pretend it makes you powerful. I could still release everything. Right now. One click and it's done. Go ahead, Ethan said. But understand what happens next. Your files go to the FBI 60 seconds after Olivia's go public. You'll be arrested before the news cycle even picks up the story. And then you get to spend the next year watching her rebuild while you sit in a cell waiting for trial. The silence stretched between them, taut and dangerous. Ethan kept his face neutral, his body language relaxed, even though his heart was hammering. This was it. Either Marcus broke or he didn't. Either the bluff worked or they all lost. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something in his expression shifted. I need to make a call. No calls, Ethan said. You decide right here, right now. That's not reasonable. None of this is reasonable. But those are the terms. He glanced at Olivia, who nodded. You've got 2 minutes to decide. Walk away clean or roll the dice and see what happens. Marcus stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a second, Ethan thought he was going to leave, just walk out and trigger the release out of pure spite. But instead, Marcus just stood there, hands clenched, breathing hard. You've got no idea what you're doing, Marcus said. The blackmail system is more complicated than you think. There are triggers you haven't found, backups in places you can't access. Even if I wanted to delete everything, I couldn't guarantee it's completely gone. Then show us, Olivia said. Right now. Open your laptop, walk us through the system, and we'll dismantle it together. That's the deal. She stood up as well, matching his energy. You're right, we might not find everything, but at least we'll know you tried. At least we'll know you're not keeping copies just to use later. Marcus looked between them, trapped and hating it. Then slowly, he sat back down and pulled out his laptop. This doesn't mean I trust you. Good, Ethan said. We don't trust you either, but trust isn't necessary. Mutual self-interest is. For the next 40 minutes, Marcus walked them through his blackmail system. The automated triggers, the dead man switches, the backup servers scattered across 3 states. It was sophisticated, more sophisticated than Ethan had expected. Marcus had clearly spent months building something that could survive almost any attack. But sophisticated didn't mean invulnerable. Ethan documented every piece of the system, mapping it in real time, identifying the weak points. The primary server in Newark, the backup in New Jersey, the tertiary system running on a virtual machine in Colorado, and the control panel, password protected and encrypted, that managed all of it. How do we know you're not showing us a fake system? Olivia asked. You don't, Marcus said. But if I'm showing you a fake, then the real one is still out there, which means you haven't actually solved anything. So what's the point? The point is, you could be buying time. For what? I'm sitting here with both of you, showing you exactly how I've been running this operation. If I was buying time, I'd be halfway to the airport by now. Ethan studied the system architecture on Marcus's screen. It looked legitimate, the kind of setup someone would build if they were genuinely trying to make something bulletproof. Okay, so how do we dismantle it? Carefully, Marcus said. The dead man's switch is tied to my login patterns. If I don't check in every 12 hours, it assumes I'm compromised and triggers the release. So we can't just shut down the servers. We have to disarm the triggers first, then delete the files, then shut down the system in the right order. How long does that take? If we do it right, 3, maybe 4 hours. Olivia checked her phone. I have a board call in 90 minutes. Then I guess you're missing your board call, Marcus said. Unless you want to risk me doing this alone and maybe missing something on purpose. She looked at Ethan. He nodded slightly. She was right to be suspicious, but they didn't have better options. Fine, Olivia said, but we do this here, in public, where I can watch everything you're doing. A coffee shop isn't exactly a secure location for this kind of work. Too bad. Those are the terms. Marcus laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. You know what's funny? I actually liked you when we were together. I thought you were different from all the other corporate types. Turns out you're exactly the same, just better at hiding it. If that makes you feel better about trying to destroy my life, believe it, Olivia said.
Now start dismantling your system before I change my mind about letting you walk. They moved to a corner table with better privacy, and Marcus started working. Ethan watched over his shoulder, tracking every command, every file access, every change to the system. Olivia sat across from them, supposedly reviewing documents on her tablet, but actually watching Marcus with the kind of focus that made it clear she didn't trust him not to sabotage the process. The dismantling took longer than 4 hours. Marcus kept finding complications, additional triggers he'd forgotten about, encrypted backups that needed different credentials, fail-safes built on top of fail-safes. Some of it was probably legitimate. Some of it was probably Marcus stalling, trying to figure out if there was still an angle that gave him back control. But slowly, piece by piece, the system came apart. Ethan verified each step against his own documentation, making sure nothing was being hidden or rerouted. When Marcus claimed a backup server was deleted, Ethan checked the logs to confirm it. When Marcus said a trigger was disarmed, Ethan traced the code to verify it wasn't just disabled temporarily. It was tedious, technical work, the kind of thing that made Ethan's eyes hurt and his back ache from hunching over a laptop. But it was also the most important work he'd done in years, because every verification meant Olivia got one step closer to freedom. Around 3 in the afternoon, Marcus sat back and closed his laptop. That's it. Everything's gone. The files, the backups, the triggers, all of it. You're sure, Olivia said. I'm sure. You can verify it yourself if you want. Ethan pulled out his own laptop and started running traces on all the servers Marcus had accessed. The Newark location came back clean. No blackmail files, no automated systems, nothing but empty directories and deleted logs. New Jersey was the same. Colorado returned the same results. He's right, Ethan said. It's gone. Olivia looked at Marcus. The photos? The merger documents? Everything? Everything. How do I know you didn't keep copies somewhere else? You don't. But if I did, then we're right back where we started, which means I wasted 6 hours dismantling my own system for no reason. So yeah, I kept copies. I've got them hidden in a safety deposit box in Geneva, and I'm planning to release them next Tuesday just to watch you panic. He stood up, grabbing his laptop. Or maybe I'm telling the truth and you're just paranoid. Either way, we're done here. Wait, Ethan said. One more thing. Marcus turned back. What? I need proof that the dead man's switch is actually disabled. Not just your word, actual proof. How am I supposed to prove a negative? Disconnect from your systems for 24 hours. If nothing releases automatically, we know the switch is off. If something does release, we know you lied and the deal's void. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's the deal, Olivia said. 24 hours offline. After that, you can disappear and we never contact you again. But until then, you stay where we can see you. You want me to just sit here for a full day? Not here, but somewhere we can monitor. Somewhere public. Ethan pulled up a map on his phone. There's a hotel 3 blocks from here. Check in, stay in your room, order room service. We'll have someone watching to make sure you don't access any computers or try to leave. This is insane. This is insurance. You burned any goodwill you might have had when you built a blackmail system with automated triggers. So now you get to prove you actually dismantled it. Ethan stood up. Unless you'd rather we just release everything we have to the FBI right now and skip the verification period. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue. Then he looked at Olivia, at Ethan, at the coffee shop full of witnesses, and the fight went out of him. Fine, he said. 24 hours. Then I'm gone, and we never speak again. Deal. They walked Marcus to the hotel, watched him check in, and waited until he was in his room before leaving. Ethan had already set up monitoring on Marcus's devices. If he tried to access the blackmail system or contact anyone suspicious, alerts would trigger immediately. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. Outside, the afternoon sun was too bright after hours inside. Olivia stood on the sidewalk, and for the first time since Ethan had met her, she looked like she might actually fall apart. Did we just win? She asked. Maybe. Won't know for sure until tomorrow. I feel like I should feel relieved, but I just feel... She paused, searching for the word. Empty. That's normal. You've been running on adrenaline and fear for days. Now that it's maybe over, your body doesn't know what to do. How do you know that?
Because that's what happened after Sarah died. The crisis ended and I just existed. Took me months to feel anything that wasn't exhaustion. He started walking and she fell into step beside him. Give yourself time to process.
Right now, you just need to get through the next 24 hours without collapsing. What are you going to do? Go home. Pick up Mia from my mother's place. Make dinner. Pretend today was normal. He glanced at her. You should do the same. Go home, eat something, try to sleep. I'll monitor Marcus overnight. If anything changes, I'll call you. What if he's lying? What if the system's still active? Then tomorrow we'll know and we'll adjust. But I don't think he's lying. He looked genuinely beaten in there. They reached the subway entrance and stopped. Olivia turned to face him, and she looked smaller somehow, like the armor she'd been wearing for days had finally cracked. Thank you, she said, for believing this was worth fixing, for not walking away. You already thanked me. I know, but now I mean it more. She hesitated, then reached out and took his hand, squeezing it briefly before letting go. When this is over, when we know for sure it's over, I owe you dinner, or a drink, or whatever you want that isn't illegal or dangerous. Ethan smiled. I'll hold you to that. She disappeared down the subway stairs and he watched her go, feeling something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not quite hope, not quite relief. Something in between, fragile and uncertain but real. He took a different train back to Brooklyn, checking his phone every few minutes for alerts from the monitoring system. Nothing yet. Marcus was staying in his room exactly like he'd agreed. Maybe he really was done. Maybe this really was over. Or maybe tomorrow would bring a whole new crisis and Ethan would have to figure out what came next. Either way, he'd done what he promised. He'd given Olivia a way out. The rest was just waiting to see if it stuck. Mia was eating cereal in front of the television when Ethan's phone exploded with alerts at 6:15 the next morning. He'd been awake for 20 minutes already, making coffee and trying to convince himself that Marcus had actually stayed in that hotel room all night like he'd promised. The alert said otherwise. Marcus had accessed his backup systems 4 hours ago. Not the servers they'd dismantled together, different ones, hidden deeper, probably set up specifically for this scenario. He'd logged in, pulled files, and sent encrypted messages to 3 different email addresses Ethan didn't recognize. No, Ethan said out loud, staring at his laptop screen. No, you didn't. Didn't what? Mia asked, not looking away from her cartoon. Nothing, baby. Keep watching your show. He grabbed his phone and called Olivia. She answered on the first ring, which meant she hadn't slept either. Tell me the alerts are wrong, she said instead of hello. They're not wrong. He accessed backup servers at 2 a.m. Different ones than what he showed us yesterday. What does that mean? It means he lied. It means he had contingency systems we didn't find. It means... Ethan pulled up the access logs, scanning through them fast. It means he's preparing to release something, but I don't know what yet. Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then, I have the gala tonight. 200 people, every major investor, press coverage. If he releases anything today, it happens in front of everyone. That's probably exactly what he's planning. Ethan stood up, carrying his laptop to his workspace. He wants maximum impact, wants you humiliated publicly. Can you stop it? I don't know. Maybe. I need to trace where he sent those messages, figure out what files he pulled. His fingers were already moving across the keyboard, following digital breadcrumbs. Where are you right now? My apartment. Getting ready for a board meeting in 2 hours that I might not make it through. Cancel it. I can't cancel. Olivia, if he releases those files before your meeting, you're going to be answering questions about blackmail and privacy breaches instead of merger votes. Cancel the meeting. Buy yourself time. She exhaled slowly. Okay, I'll push it to tomorrow. What do you need from me? Nothing yet, just stay reachable. I'll call you when I know more. He hung up and dove into Marcus's network, moving faster than careful, breaking through security he should have taken time to analyze. But speed mattered more than caution right now. Every minute he spent being methodical was another minute Marcus had to activate whatever trap he'd prepared. The backup servers were hosted in Virginia, running on commercial cloud infrastructure. Marcus had been smart about it, used a shell company to rent the space, encrypted everything 3 times over, set up access protocols that should have taken days to crack. Ethan cracked them in 40 minutes. The files were all there. Photos, documents, emails, everything Marcus had supposedly deleted yesterday. He'd shown them a fake dismantling, walked them through destroying a decoy system while the real blackmail operation stayed intact. "Son of a bitch," Ethan muttered. "Daddy said a bad word," Mia announced from the living room. "Daddy's sorry." He wasn't sorry. He was furious. At Marcus for lying, at himself for believing it, at the whole situation for being exactly as complicated as he'd feared. The messages Marcus sent were time-delayed releases, scheduled to go out at 7 p.m. tonight, right in the middle of Olivia's gala. One message to the New York Times business desk, one to a gossip blog that covered tech industry scandals, one to what looked like a competitor's legal team. Marcus had built a bomb and set the timer. Ethan could disable the scheduled sends, but that wouldn't solve the problem. Marcus would just reset them. He could delete the files entirely, but Marcus probably had copies somewhere else. He could shut down the servers, but that might trigger other systems Ethan hadn't found yet. Every option was bad. He needed something better. His phone rang. Not Olivia this time, Derek. "Dude, are you aware that there's a guy sitting in a car outside your building?" Derek said. Ethan's stomach dropped. "What kind of car?" "Black sedan, tinted windows, been there for like an hour. I only noticed because I was walking past and saw him watching your door." "Can you see the plate?" "Yeah, hang on." Shuffling sounds. "New Jersey tags." "You want me to approach him?" "No, don't do anything. Just go home and forget you saw it." "That's not concerning at all." "Derek." I know. None of my business." He paused. "You're okay, though? You and Mia?" "We're fine. Just some work stuff got complicated." "Your work stuff always gets complicated." Derek hung up. Ethan stood up and moved to the window carefully, looking down at the street without making it obvious he was looking. The black sedan was exactly where Derek said it would be, parked across from the loading zone, engine running. Marcus had sent someone to watch him, or maybe to do more than watch. He thought about calling the police, but what would he say? A car was parked on a public street. Someone might be watching his building. They'd take a report and do nothing, and meanwhile Olivia's files would still be scheduled to release in 13 hours. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You should have taken the deal when you had the chance." Marcus. Obviously Marcus. Ethan typed back, "We had a deal. You broke it." "I had a backup plan." "You should have expected that." "So what now? You release everything and go to prison anyway?" "Prison requires proof. And all the proof you had was on systems I've now wiped. Thanks for showing me exactly what you found, by the way. Made it much easier to know what to delete." Ethan wanted to throw his phone through the window. Instead, he typed, "You're making a mistake." "No. You made the mistake thinking you were smarter than me. Now Olivia gets to learn what happens when she tries to fight back. And you get to watch, knowing you're the one who gave her hope right before I took it away. There's still time to stop this." "There really isn't. See you at the gala." The messages stopped. Ethan tried calling the number, but it went straight to voicemail. Burner phone, probably. Marcus wasn't stupid enough to use traceable communication now. Ethan sat back down at his laptop and started working. If he couldn't stop the release through technical means, maybe he could undercut it, make the files worthless before they went public, release them himself with context, on Olivia's terms instead of Marcus's. It was a terrible plan, but it was the only plan he had. He called Olivia back. "Change of strategy, we're not stopping the release, we're beating Marcus to it." "What are you talking about?" "He scheduled everything to go public at 7 p.m., so we go public at noon. We release the files ourselves with a statement explaining that you were blackmailed, that you're reporting it to authorities, that you're not backing down from the merger despite attempts at corporate sabotage." "That's... You want me to release my own blackmail material?" "I want you to control the narrative. Right now, Marcus has all the power because he decides when and how the information comes out. We take that away. We make it a story about survival instead of scandal." Olivia was quiet for a long time. Ethan could hear her breathing, could almost hear her brain working through scenarios. "If I do that," she said finally, "the photos go public anyway. The documents still leak. I still lose the merger vote." "Maybe." Or maybe your board sees you taking control of a crisis and respects it. Maybe the press covers it as corporate espionage instead of personal scandal. Maybe you lose some things and save others. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement. It's the best I've got. Marcus outplayed us yesterday. He prepared for exactly what we did. So now we do something he didn't prepare for. And what if it doesn't work? What if I blow up my own life and the merger still fails and Marcus still wins? Then at least you did it on your terms. Ethan closed his laptop. Look, I know this is terrifying. I know you're looking for a solution that doesn't hurt, but those don't exist anymore. Marcus made sure of that. So now you pick which hurt you can live with. Another long silence, then, okay, we do it your way, but I need you there, at the gala. I can't do this alone. I'm not really a gala person. I don't care. I need someone there who knows what's actually happening, someone who's on my side. Ethan thought about the car outside his building, about Marcus's threats, about Mia watching cartoons in the next room, oblivious to the fact that her father was about to walk into something dangerous. Okay, he said, I'll be there, but I need to sort some things out first. What things? Marcus sent someone to watch my building. I need to make sure Mia's safe before I leave her with my mother tonight. He's threatening your daughter? He's threatening my building, but the message is the same. Ethan stood up again, moving back to the window. The sedan was still there. I'll handle it. Just focus on your statement. Write down everything, how Marcus approached you, what he took, how he built the blackmail system. Make it detailed. Make it sound like corporate espionage instead of relationship drama. It was relationship drama. Then reframe it. You dated a consultant who later weaponized access you'd given him professionally. That's not drama. That's industrial espionage. You're very good at spin. I've had practice. He hung up and went to check on Mia, who'd moved from cartoons to building an elaborate block castle on the living room floor. Daddy, look, she said, pointing at her creation. It's taller than me. It's beautiful, baby. Are you sad? The question caught him off guard. No. Why? You look sad. Like when you look at the picture of Mommy. Ethan sat down next to her, and she immediately climbed into his lap. I'm not sad. I'm just thinking about work. Is work hard? Sometimes, but that's okay. Hard things are still worth doing. She nodded like this made perfect sense to her 4-year-old brain. Like brushing teeth. Exactly like brushing teeth. He held her for a few minutes, letting the weight of her ground him. This was what mattered. Not Marcus. Not the blackmail. Not even Olivia. As much as he'd started to care about her situation. Mia was the center. Everything else was peripheral. But peripheral things still needed handling. At noon, he called his mother and asked if she could take Mia for the night. Yes. Again. Yes, he knew it was a lot to ask. Yes, he'd explain everything later. You're scaring me, his mother said. Don't be scared. I'm just dealing with a complicated client situation. I need to make sure Mia's somewhere safe while I handle it. Safe from what? From being disappointed if I'm late picking her up. It wasn't exactly a lie. Please, Mom, I'll owe you 100 favors. She agreed like he knew she would, and showed up an hour later to collect Mia and her overnight bag. She gave Ethan a look that said they'd be having a longer conversation about this later, but she didn't push. After they left, Ethan went downstairs and walked directly to the black sedan. The driver saw him coming and started the engine, but Ethan was faster. He stepped in front of the car, pulled out his phone, and took 3 photos of the license plate and driver. Then he leaned down to the window and knocked. The driver rolled it down 2 inches. You need something? Yeah, tell Marcus that threatening me doesn't change anything. The evidence I have still exists. The automated release system still exists. And if anything happens to me or my family, it all goes to the FBI automatically. You got that? The driver stared at him. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just make sure Marcus gets the message. Ethan stepped back. Also, you've been parked here for 3 hours. The meter ran out 90 minutes ago. Might want to move before you get a ticket. He walked back inside without waiting for a response, heart hammering but trying not to show it. The sedan pulled away 30 seconds later. Ethan watched from the window until it disappeared around the corner. Maybe that would work. Maybe Marcus would back off, realizing intimidation wasn't effective. Or maybe Ethan had just made things worse. Either way, he'd drawn a line. At 3 p.m., Olivia sent him her statement. It was good, clear, factual, framing the situation as corporate sabotage rather than personal scandal. She explained the blackmail, the attempts at extortion, her decision to go public rather than comply. She even mentioned the FBI investigation that didn't exist yet, but would once she filed the official report. Ethan read it twice, made minor edits, and sent it back. This works. When do you want to release it? 4 p.m. Gives the press time to pick it up before the gala. With luck, by the time Marcus's scheduled release hits, it's already old news and he gets nothing. That's optimistic. I'm allowed to be optimistic for 10 more minutes before reality crashes back in. At 4 p.m., Olivia's statement went live, posted to her company's website, sent to major news outlets, shared across social media. Within 20 minutes, it had been picked up by 3 business reporters and 1 tech blog. Within an hour, it was trending. The response was mixed. Some people praised her for going public. Some criticized her for dating someone with access to sensitive information. Some focused on the corporate espionage angle. Some focused on the photos. But the narrative was shifting. By 6 p.m., when Ethan was getting dressed for the gala in the one suit he owned that didn't have coffee stains, the story had become less about scandal and more about corporate warfare. Olivia Hart, the CEO who refused to be blackmailed. The executive fighting back against sabotage. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than Marcus's version would have been. Ethan took a cab into Manhattan, arriving at the gala venue at 6:40. The place was exactly what he expected. Crystal chandeliers, designer dresses, people who'd never worried about money having conversations about stock portfolios. He felt immediately out of place in his department store suit and uncomfortable shoes. Security checked his name against the guest list, and he saw Olivia had added him under Ethan Ryder, security consultant. Accurate, if generous. He found her near the bar, surrounded by people in expensive clothes making small talk that sounded important. She saw him and her expression shifted, relief mixed with something else he couldn't quite identify. She excused herself from the conversation and met him near the entrance. "You came," she said. "Said I would. You're underdressed." "I'm appropriately dressed for someone who fixes computers. This is a stretch for me." She almost smiled. "Thank you for being here, for everything. How bad is it?" "Mixed. Some board members want to delay the merger vote. Some think I should step down temporarily. Some are acting like nothing happened because they don't know how to process it." She took a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and drank half of it in one go. "But we're still standing. That's something." "It's more than something." "Is it?" She looked around the room. "Everyone here has seen those photos by now. Everyone knows about the merger documents. I'm going to spend the rest of my career being the CEO who got blackmailed by her ex-boyfriend. That's my legacy now." "No. Your legacy is being the CEO who got targeted and fought back, who went public instead of hiding, who refused to let someone destroy her life." Ethan took the champagne glass from her hand and set it on a nearby table. "You're not defined by what Marcus did. You're defined by what you did next." "That's a nice speech." "It's also true." She looked at him directly, and something in her expression cracked. "I don't know how to do this. How to stand here and pretend everything's normal when I feel like I'm falling apart." "You don't pretend. You just exist through it, 1 minute at a time. Eventually, the minutes add up to hours and you realize you survived." "Is that what you did? After your wife?" "That's what I'm still doing." He glanced around the room at all the people watching them peripherally, probably wondering who he was. "This gets easier. Not good. Just easier." Before Olivia could respond, someone approached, a man in his 60s wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's car. "Olivia, we need to talk about the vote." "Richard, not now." "The board's concerned. We need assurances that this situation is contained before we move forward with the merger." "It's contained. I filed a report with the FBI this afternoon. Marcus Kane is going to be arrested for corporate espionage and extortion. The situation is resolved." Richard looked skeptical. "And the leaked documents? The acquisition plans that are now public?" "Are being addressed by our legal team. The information is old. None of it reflects our current strategy." Olivia's voice was steady, but Ethan could see tension in her shoulders. The merger vote happens as scheduled, unless you're saying the board doesn't trust my judgment anymore. I'm saying the board needs confidence that you can lead through this. Then watch me lead. She turned to Ethan. Richard, this is Ethan Ryder. He's the security specialist who helped identify and stop the espionage operation. Without his work, we'd still be vulnerable. Richard looked at Ethan like he was trying to decide if he was worth acknowledging. Security specialist. And what exactly did you secure? Everything your CEO hired me to secure, Ethan said, which is more than most people in this room could have done. Richard's expression tightened. Olivia, we'll discuss this Monday. Enjoy your evening. He walked away, already pulling out his phone. That went well, Ethan said. That was a disaster. Richard controls 3 board votes. If he turns on me, the merger's dead. So convince him you're worth supporting. How? By giving a motivational speech about fighting back? He doesn't care about inspiration. He cares about returns. Then show him returns. Show him the merger still makes financial sense despite the sabotage. Show him you're the person who can deliver it. Olivia looked at him. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's clear. You either convince your board you're still the right person to lead, or you don't. Everything else is just noise. She was about to respond when Ethan's phone buzzed. Alert from his monitoring system. Marcus had just accessed the backup servers again, and this time he was in the building. He's here, Ethan said. What? Marcus. He's somewhere in this venue. He just logged into his systems using the hotel Wi-Fi. Olivia's face went pale. Why would he come here? Because he wants to watch, wants to see your face when his scheduled release hits and he thinks he wins. Ethan was already scanning the room, looking for anyone who didn't fit. We need to find him before 7 p.m. And do what? I don't know yet, but standing here waiting isn't a strategy. They moved through the gala separately, Ethan checking the bar area while Olivia worked the main room. The venue was crowded, maybe 300 people spread across 2 floors, and Marcus could be anywhere. Ethan checked his phone every 30 seconds, watching the access logs, trying to triangulate Marcus's location from the Wi-Fi signal. At 6:55, he found him. Marcus was on the second-floor balcony, overlooking the main room, drink in hand, watching Olivia talk to investors below. He looked relaxed, almost happy. Ethan climbed the stairs and approached from the side. Nice view. Marcus didn't seem surprised to see him. I like to watch my work. See the results in real time. Your work failed. Olivia went public hours ago. Your scheduled release isn't going to land the way you think. Maybe. Or maybe people seeing those photos during her big moment still destroys her. Context doesn't matter when the images are that intimate. Marcus checked his watch. 3 minutes. Then we find out. You know I still have everything on you, right? All the evidence of your other operations? You showing up here doesn't change that. And you know I've deleted all of it from my servers, right? Anything you have now is just copies. No forensic trail back to me. You can't prove I'm the source. Ethan moved closer. So what's the end game here, Marcus? You release the files, Olivia survives it, and then what? You spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder waiting for the FBI to knock? I spend the rest of my life knowing I won. That's enough. That's pathetic. Marcus smiled. Says the guy who spent 3 years raising a kid alone because he's too scared to let anyone close. You think I don't know about you? I looked you up. Ethan Ryder, cybersecurity specialist, widower, lives in a warehouse and pretends that's a personality. You're helping Olivia because you're lonely, not because you're noble. You're right. I am lonely. And scared. And probably making bad decisions for emotional reasons. Ethan pulled out his phone. But at least I'm helping someone instead of tearing them down. That's still better than what you're doing. Is it, though? Marcus checked his watch again. 2 minutes. Better get your phone ready. You'll want to capture her face when she realizes I wasn't bluffing. Ethan looked down at the main room. Olivia was still talking to investors, still performing the role of confident CEO. In 2 minutes, Marcus's scheduled release would hit, and the entire room would see the photos, see the documents, see everything Marcus wanted them to see. Unless Ethan stopped it. He'd been thinking about this all day, running through scenarios, looking for the option that worked. And finally, standing next to Marcus watching the clock run down, he saw it. "You're going to cancel the release," Ethan said. Marcus laughed. "No, I'm not." "Yeah, you are. Because if you don't, I'm going to walk down there right now and tell everyone in this room exactly who you are. Tell them about your blackmail operation, your insider trading, your 6 years of corporate sabotage. I'll make you famous, Marcus, and then I'll make sure every tech company in the country knows never to work with you again. You don't have proof. I have enough. And more importantly, I have conviction. People believe passionate accusations more than they believe denials." Ethan held up his phone, showing the access logs. "You're logged into your servers right now. I can prove you're here. I can prove you're about to release confidential information. That's enough to start an investigation. Maybe not enough to convict, but enough to destroy your reputation." Marcus's smile faded. "You're bluffing." "You keep saying that. You said it yesterday too, right before you realized I wasn't." Ethan moved to the balcony railing. "1 minute, Marcus. Cancel the release or I start talking. Your choice." For a moment, Marcus didn't move. Just stood there holding his drink, doing calculations, trying to figure out if Ethan was serious. Then he pulled out his phone and opened an app. "You're going to regret this." "Probably, but that's tomorrow's problem." Ethan watched as Marcus typed commands, canceling the scheduled sends, disabling the automated releases. All of it. Everything you set up. "This doesn't change anything. I can reset them." "Sure, but you won't. Because now you know I'm watching. And the second you try again, I make good on my threat." Ethan pocketed his phone. "Go home, Marcus. Disappear. Find a new city, a new career, a new set of victims. But stay away from Olivia. Stay away from me. And maybe you get to keep pretending you won something." Marcus finished canceling the releases, then looked at Ethan with pure hatred. "She's not going to love you, you know. People like her don't end up with people like you." "Good thing I'm not doing this for love, then." "Then why are you doing it?" Ethan thought about that. About Sarah. About Mia. About 3 years of surviving instead of living, 3 years of keeping everyone at a distance because distance felt safer than risk. "Because someone needed to," he said finally, "and I was available." Marcus left without another word, disappearing down the stairs and out of the venue. Ethan watched him go, then pulled out his phone and verified the releases were actually canceled. They were. All of them. For now. He went back downstairs and found Olivia still talking to investors, still performing. When she saw him, she excused herself and met him near the bar. 7 o'clock just passed, she said quietly. Nothing happened. "I know, Marcus canceled it. How? I convinced him it wasn't in his best interest to follow through." Ethan ordered water from the bartender. "He's gone. Left the venue about 5 minutes ago." "So it's over?" "For tonight. Maybe longer. But we should still file that FBI report, make everything official." Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she did something Ethan didn't expect. She reached out and hugged him, right there in the middle of her corporate gala, not caring who saw. "Thank you," she said into his shoulder, "for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself." Ethan hesitated, then hugged her back. "You were fighting the whole time. I just helped clear some obstacles." She pulled away and he saw tears in her eyes that she was trying very hard not to let fall. "I need to get back to work. Smile for cameras, reassure investors, pretend tonight went exactly as planned." "You're good at that." "The pretending." "Years of practice." She walked back into the crowd, and Ethan watched her go. Around him, the gala continued. Music, champagne, people laughing and making deals and living lives that would never intersect with his. He felt profoundly out of place. But he also felt for the first time in a long time like he'd done something that mattered. His phone buzzed, text from his mother. "Mia's asleep. You better have a good explanation for all this tomorrow." He smiled and typed back, "I'll try." Then he left the gala, took a cab back to Brooklyn, and went home to his empty loft. Tomorrow he'd pick up Mia. Tomorrow he'd explain things to his mother. Tomorrow he'd follow up with Olivia about the FBI report and make sure Marcus really was gone. But tonight, he was just tired. And that was enough. The FBI agent's name was Chen, and she had the kind of tired eyes that suggested she'd heard every variation of corporate crime story at least twice. She sat across from Ethan and Olivia in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and legal paperwork. taking notes while they walked through everything that had happened over the past week. "So you accessed his systems without authorization," Agent Chen said, looking at Ethan. "Yes. And you built a counter-blackmail system using the same techniques he used." "Also yes. And you're aware that's multiple federal crimes." "Very aware." Ethan leaned back in his chair. "But I'm also aware that if I hadn't done those things, Marcus Kane would still be extorting people and nobody would have stopped him." Agent Chen made another note. "That's not actually a legal defense." "I'm not looking for a legal defense. I'm looking to make sure he can't do this to anyone else. We'll open an investigation. But without the original files on his servers, without forensic evidence linking him directly to the blackmail operation, this is going to be difficult to prosecute." Olivia spoke up. "He showed us the system, walked us through how it worked. That has to count for something." "It counts as testimony, but testimony without supporting evidence is just he said, she said." Agent Chen closed her notebook. "I'll be honest with you both. Cases like this are hard. They take months, sometimes years. And even when we win, the sentence is usually minimal. White-collar criminals don't do serious time unless they steal from rich people or the government." "So you're saying we wasted our time coming here," Ethan said. "I'm saying managing expectations. We'll investigate. We'll build whatever case we can. But the best outcome here is probably Marcus Kane knowing he's being watched, which might be enough to stop him from trying this again." She stood up. "In the meantime, Ms. Hart, I'd recommend you hire a legitimate security firm. And Mr. Ryder, I'd recommend you stop committing felonies, even for good reasons." They left the FBI building and stood on the street in Lower Manhattan, watching traffic go by. It was Wednesday afternoon, 5 days after the gala, and Ethan had spent most of those days helping Olivia clean up the aftermath. New security protocols, system audits, board meetings where she had to explain repeatedly that the crisis was contained. The merger vote was tomorrow. Olivia still didn't know which way it would go. "That was depressing," she said finally. "Yeah. We handed them everything and they basically said there's nothing they can do. They said it's hard. That's different than impossible." Ethan started walking and she fell into step beside him. "But Chen's right about one thing. The fact that Marcus knows he's being investigated might be enough. People like him, they depend on operating in shadows. Once light hits them, they usually scatter." "You sound like you're trying to convince yourself." "I'm trying to find something positive in a situation that's mostly just exhausting." They walked in silence for a block. Then Olivia said, "I owe you dinner. Promised I would when this was over." "Is it over?" "Close enough. And I need to eat something that isn't conference room sandwiches." She checked her phone. "There's a place in Tribeca. Nothing fancy. You free?" Ethan thought about Mia, who was at his mother's place again because apparently his life had become one long series of emergency childcare requests. "Yeah, I'm free." The restaurant was the kind of place that tried to look casual, but still had cloth napkins and a wine list. They got a table in the corner, away from other diners, and ordered food neither of them would remember later. "So," Olivia said after the waiter left, "what happens now?" "With Marcus? Hopefully nothing. With your company? You tell me." The board votes tomorrow on the merger. Richard's still undecided, which means his 3 votes are undecided, which means we're 1 vote short of the majority we need. She drank half her water in one go. "I've spent the last 5 days making the case, showing them the numbers, explaining how the sabotage doesn't change the fundamentals, promising I can deliver what I said I'd deliver." "You believe that?" "I have to believe it. Otherwise, what was the point of fighting?" The food came and they ate without talking much. Ethan kept checking his phone out of habit, monitoring systems that didn't need monitoring anymore, watching for threats that had probably moved on to easier targets. "Can I ask you something?" Olivia said. "Sure." "Why did you really help me? And don't give me the speech about being available or helping people who need it. I want the real reason." Ethan set down his fork. "You want the real reason?" "Yes. I helped you because for 3 years I've been sleepwalking through my life, taking care of Mia, doing my work, going through motions. And when I saw you in that hallway, cornered by someone who thought he owned you, I recognized something." He paused. "I recognize what it looks like when someone's drowning and trying to pretend they're swimming.
And you wanted to save me. No, I wanted to do something that wasn't just survival. I wanted to matter for 5 minutes instead of just existing. He looked at her directly. Helping you gave me a reason to be something other than a widower who codes in his basement. Olivia was quiet for a moment. That's honest. You asked for honest. I did. She pushed food around her plate. Can I tell you something equally honest? Sure. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, not letting anyone close, not trusting anyone completely, making sure I was always in control. And then Marcus happened, and every wall I built turned into a prison. She looked up. But with you, I don't know. For the first time in years, someone saw me trapped and didn't try to use it against me. You just helped. No agenda, no angle, just helped. I had an angle. I wanted to feel useful. That's not an angle. That's just being human. They finished eating and the waiter cleared their plates. Olivia ordered coffee and Ethan ordered the same because it seemed easier than deciding. The gala, Olivia said. When you found Marcus on the balcony, what did you say to him? He left right after. I told him I'd expose him publicly if he didn't cancel the release, make him famous for all the wrong reasons. And he believed you. He believed I was willing to do it. That's usually enough. You would have actually done it, though, if he'd called your bluff. It wasn't a bluff. Olivia smiled, and it was the first genuine smile Ethan had seen from her in days.
You're dangerous when you care about something. I'm really not. I'm just persistent. Same thing. The coffee came and they drank it slowly, neither of them in a hurry to leave. Around them, the restaurant filled up with the dinner crowd, people living normal lives with normal problems. Ethan felt the familiar sense of disconnection, like he was watching the world through glass. What are you going to do? Olivia asked. After tomorrow, after the vote. Same thing I always do. Pick up Mia, fix computers, try to be a decent father. That sounds lonely. It is lonely, but it's safe. He set down his coffee cup. After Sarah died, I spent 6 months waiting for the next terrible thing to happen. Every doctor's appointment for Mia, every phone call from my mother, every unexpected expense. I assumed it was the beginning of another crisis. And eventually I realized that's not a way to live. So I built a small life. Small enough that I could control most of it. Small enough that disasters couldn't reach us. And did it work? For a while. Then you showed up in a hallway being threatened by your ex-boyfriend, and my small life got complicated again. He looked at her. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, I don't know how to do big things anymore. Don't know how to take risks that might blow up. You took a risk helping me. That was different. That was helping someone else. Risking myself is easy. Risking Mia's stability, risking the life I built for us. That's harder. Olivia reached across the table and took his hand, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest. What if the risk is worth it? How do you measure that? You don't. You just decide whether you'd rather have something real and uncertain or safe and small. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. I spent 5 years building my company, making myself untouchable, making sure nobody could hurt me. And then Marcus found exactly one way in, and everything I built almost collapsed. So now I'm asking myself, what's the point of being untouchable if I'm also unreachable? Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know if she was talking about her company or about something else entirely. So he just sat there, drinking coffee that had gone lukewarm, trying to figure out what came next. His phone buzzed, text from his mother. Mia wants to know if you're coming home tonight or if she should plan on another sleepover. He showed the text to Olivia. I should go. She's been shuffled around too much this week. Yeah, of course. Olivia signaled for the check. Thank you for dinner, for everything. You paid for dinner. You know what I mean. They paid and left the restaurant, standing on the Tribeca sidewalk while the city moved around them. Ethan called for a car and they waited in awkward silence until it arrived. Good luck tomorrow, he said, with the vote. Thanks. I'll need it. You'll be fine. You've been through worse this week, she smiled. That's not exactly a high bar. The car pulled up and Ethan reached for the door, then stopped. Olivia? Yeah? Whatever happens tomorrow, you fought for something you believed in. That counts. Even if the vote goes wrong, that still counts. You trying to prepare me for bad news? I'm trying to remind you that winning and doing the right thing aren't always the same. He opened the car door. See you around. He got in and the car pulled away, and through the window he saw her standing on the sidewalk watching him leave. He almost told the driver to stop, almost went back, almost did something other than retreat to his safe, small life in Brooklyn. But almost didn't count. He picked up Mia from his mother's house and endured 20 minutes of questions about where he'd been and who he'd been helping and whether this mysterious client situation was finally resolved. He gave vague answers because the real answers were too complicated and his mother was already worried enough. At home, Mia demanded 3 stories before bed, and he read them all, doing the voices, making her laugh. This was real. This was what mattered. Everything else was just noise. After she fell asleep, he sat at his computer and checked the monitoring systems one last time. Marcus's servers were quiet. No access attempts, no suspicious activity, no signs that he was rebuilding his blackmail operation. Maybe Agent Chen was right. Maybe being investigated was enough to make him disappear. Or maybe he was just being more careful. Ethan's phone rang at 11 p.m. Olivia. Did I wake you? She asked. No, I'm up. You okay? I can't sleep. Keep running through tomorrow's presentation in my head, looking for holes. She was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. Earlier, at dinner, you said you didn't know how to take risks anymore. Did you mean that? Ethan thought about lying, about deflecting, about keeping the walls up. Yeah, I meant it. Why? Because taking risks means accepting that things might fall apart. And I've already watched my life fall apart once. I don't know if I can do it again. But you helped me anyway. That was a risk. That was different. It's not different, Olivia interrupted. You risked legal consequences, risked Marcus coming after you, risked exposing yourself and Mia to someone dangerous. You took all of that risk for someone you barely knew. So don't tell me you don't know how to take risks. You just don't know how to take them for yourself. Ethan didn't have an answer for that. I'm scared, Olivia said quietly. About tomorrow. About what happens if I lose the vote. About whether I can keep being the person who fights back when it would be easier to quit. You won't quit. How do you know? Because quitting isn't in your vocabulary. You might lose, but you won't quit. She laughed, and it sounded tired. You have a lot of faith in someone you've known for a week. Sometimes a week is enough. They talked for another 20 minutes about nothing important. Mia's latest block tower, Olivia's crazy board member who thought the merger should include a cryptocurrency component, the coffee shop where they'd first planned the confrontation with Marcus. Normal conversation, like they were normal people with normal lives. I should let you go, Olivia finally said. Big day tomorrow. For you more than me. Will you? She paused. Will you be thinking about it, the vote? Yeah, I'll be thinking about it. Okay, that's... Okay. Good night, Ethan. Good night. He hung up and sat in the dark loft, listening to the city sounds filtering through the windows. Somewhere in Manhattan, Olivia was probably still awake, running through scenarios, preparing for a vote that would determine whether the last year of her life meant anything. And Ethan realized, sitting there alone, that he wanted her to win. Not just because he'd invested time and effort in helping her, but because somewhere in the past week, she'd stopped being a stranger and started being someone he cared about. That was terrifying. The next day crawled past. Ethan tried to work, tried to focus on other clients and other problems, but his mind kept drifting back to Olivia's board meeting. The vote was scheduled for 2 p.m. By 3, he'd know whether everything they'd fought for had been worth it. At 2:30, his phone rang. We won, Olivia said, and her voice was shaking. 17-8. Richard voted yes. The merger's happening. Ethan felt something release in his chest. That's incredible. I can't believe it. I was so sure we'd lose, so sure Marcus had destroyed too much trust. She was crying now, he could hear it. But Richard stood up during the vote and said I'd shown more courage in the past week than most CEOs show in their entire careers. Said the merger was sound and I was the person to lead it. You earned that. We earned it, you and me. She took a shaky breath. I need to go. There's press and investor calls, and about 100 things happening at once. But I wanted you to know. Wanted you to hear it from me. I'm glad you called. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you. For giving me a chance to fight back, for believing I could win. You did the fighting. I just cleared some obstacles. That's still everything. She hung up and Ethan sat there holding his phone, feeling something unfamiliar. Pride, maybe. Or satisfaction. Or just the simple relief of watching someone deserve a victory and actually getting it. Mia came running into his workspace, holding a drawing she'd made of what appeared to be a dragon fighting a castle. Daddy, look! That's beautiful, baby. Can we get pizza for dinner? Yeah, we can get pizza. They got pizza and ate it in the loft while Mia told him elaborate stories about her day at preschool. Something about blocks, and a boy named Tyler, who'd knocked down her tower. Ethan listened and asked questions and tried to be present, but part of his mind was still in Manhattan with Olivia, wondering what happened next. The next few days passed in a blur. Olivia was consumed by merger negotiations and press coverage, and the million details of running a company that had just won a major victory. Ethan went back to his normal work, fixing computers and auditing security systems and being a single father. They texted occasionally. Nothing deep, just checking in, making sure the other person was okay, making sure Marcus hadn't resurfaced or Agent Chen hadn't called with bad news about the investigation. On Friday, Olivia asked if he wanted to meet for coffee. Nothing formal, just coffee. They met at the same place in Dumbo where they'd planned the first confrontation with Marcus. Different context now. No crisis, no immediate danger, just two people who'd survived something together and didn't quite know what to do next. How's the merger going? Ethan asked. Complicated, but good complicated. The kind where you're building something instead of watching it fall apart. She had coffee this time, real coffee, not the emergency caffeine they'd been surviving on. How's Mia? Obsessed with getting a cat. I'm running out of excuses. You should get her a cat. I should probably get her a cat. He smiled. But then I'd have to take care of a cat, and I'm barely managing the responsibilities I already have. You're doing better than managing. You're actually living again. Is that what this is? What else would you call it? Ethan thought about that, about the past 2 weeks, about helping Olivia, confronting Marcus, taking risks he'd spent 3 years avoiding. I don't know, but it's different than what I was doing before. Different good or different bad? Still figuring that out. They drank coffee and watched people walk past the window. Normal Friday afternoon in Brooklyn, everyone going about their lives, oblivious to the small drama that had played out between a CEO and her blackmailer and the security specialist who'd gotten caught in the middle. I've been thinking, Olivia said, about what you said at dinner, about building a small life so disasters can't reach you. Yeah? I think I've been doing the same thing, building walls, keeping people out, making sure I'm always in control. And it worked until it didn't, until Marcus found a way in and everything collapsed. She set down her coffee. But here's what I learned. The walls don't actually protect you. They just make you lonely while you wait for the next terrible thing to happen. So what's the alternative? I don't know, but I think it involves letting people in even when it's scary, taking risks even when you can't guarantee they'll work out, building something real instead of something safe. Ethan looked at her. You're talking about more than just your company. Yeah, I am. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ethan said, I don't know how to do this. The thing you're describing. I don't know how to let someone in when my entire life is structured around keeping people at a distance. So we figure it out together, small steps, no pressure, just see what happens. What if it doesn't work? Then it doesn't work. But at least we tried something other than being alone. Ethan thought about Mia, about the small life he'd built in his warehouse loft, about 3 years of survival and routine and carefully managed stability. And he thought about the past 2 weeks, about feeling useful and necessary and present in a way he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Okay, he said finally. Small steps. Olivia smiled. That's all I'm asking. They finished their coffee and walked through Brooklyn together, not talking much, just existing in the same space. It wasn't romantic or cinematic or any of the things movies made it look like. It was just two people who'd survived something together, deciding that maybe survival was easier when you didn't do it alone. A week later, Ethan brought Mia to meet Olivia at a park in Prospect Heights. He'd been nervous about it, worried that mixing his carefully separated worlds would break something. But Mia had been asking about the woman Daddy kept texting, and Ethan had run out of vague answers. Olivia showed up in jeans and a sweater, looking more relaxed than Ethan had ever seen her. She brought a kite she'd bought specifically for this meeting, which was either charming or calculated or both. "Hi," she said to Mia. "I'm Olivia, your dad's friend." Mia studied her seriously. "Daddy says you're important." "He's important too." "I know. He fixes computers and makes me breakfast and reads me stories." Mia pointed at the kite. "Is that for me?" "If you want it." They spent an hour in the park, flying the kite and watching Mia run around with the kind of boundless energy that made Ethan tired just observing it. Olivia was good with her, patient and engaged, not trying too hard to be liked. "She's amazing," Olivia said while Mia was distracted chasing birds. "She's exhausting." That too. They sat on a bench while Mia played on the nearby equipment. Other parents were scattered around the park, living their normal lives, probably not thinking about blackmail or corporate espionage or the fragile architecture of building something new after everything falls apart. "I talked to Agent Chen yesterday," Olivia said. "She said they're closing the investigation into Marcus. Not enough evidence to prosecute." That's what I expected. She also said he left the country. Moved to Singapore 3 days ago. New job, new city, fresh start. Ethan looked at her. "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved mostly, that he's gone and I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder. And angry that he gets to just leave and start over while I'm still dealing with the aftermath." She paused. "But mostly relieved." "Good. Relieved is good." Mia ran back over, demanding that Ethan push her on the swings. He stood up and Olivia came with him, and they took turns pushing while Mia shrieked with delight and demanded they push higher, higher, higher. Later, after Mia had worn herself out and Ethan had carried her back to his car, Olivia walked them to the parking lot. "Thank you for today," she said, "for letting me into this part of your life. Thank you for bringing a kite and not being weird about the fact that I have a 4-year-old. Why would I be weird about it? Some people are. Like having a kid makes me fundamentally different or less interesting. It makes you more interesting and more human." She glanced at Mia, already falling asleep in her car seat. "She's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have her. She's the only reason I got up most mornings for the past 3 years. And now? Now I've got 2 reasons." Olivia smiled. That was smooth. That was honest. They stood in the parking lot while other families loaded into cars and drove away. Normal Friday evening, normal people doing normal things. And Ethan realized that somewhere in the past 3 weeks, he'd stopped feeling like an observer and started feeling like a participant. "I should go," he said. "Get her home before she completely crashes." "Yeah, of course." Olivia hesitated, then leaned in and kissed him. Brief, tentative, like she wasn't sure if it was allowed. "See you soon?" "Yeah, see you soon." He drove home with Mia sleeping in the back seat, and for the first time in 3 years, the future felt like something other than an obstacle course to survive. It felt like possibility. That night, after putting Mia to bed, Ethan sat at his computer and deleted the monitoring systems he'd built to watch Marcus. Deleted the evidence files. Deleted the automated release triggers and the backup surveillance. All of it gone, like the past 3 weeks had been erased. Except they hadn't been erased. They'd changed everything. His phone buzzed. "Olivia, I'm glad you said yes to coffee that day. Glad you didn't walk away." He typed back. "Me too." "What are you doing tomorrow?" "Depends. What are you offering?" "Nothing exciting, just existing in the same space, maybe getting lunch, maybe introducing you to parts of my life that aren't disasters." "Sounds perfect." He put down his phone and looked around his loft. Same space, same furniture, same life he'd been living for 3 years. But it felt different now. Less like a bunker and more like a home. Mia called out from her room that she couldn't sleep. Ethan went to check on her, found her sitting up with her stuffed elephant, looking worried. "What's wrong, baby?" "I had a bad dream." "What about?" You were gone, and Grandma was gone, and I was alone. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her into his lap. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. She settled against his chest, and he held her until she fell back asleep, then laid her down carefully and pulled up the covers. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of every choice he'd made over the past 3 years. He'd built a small life to keep her safe, and that had been necessary, maybe. But Olivia was right. Walls didn't actually protect you. They just made you lonely while you waited for disasters that might never come. So maybe it was time to tear down some walls, take some risks, build something bigger than survival. The next few months unfolded in ways Ethan couldn't have predicted. Olivia's merger closed successfully, and her company's value doubled overnight. She hired Ethan officially as a security consultant, which meant steady work and steady income and the kind of stability he'd been chasing since Sarah died. They kept seeing each other, slowly, carefully, like two people who'd learned not to trust easy things. Dinner once a week became dinner twice a week became Olivia occasionally staying over after Mia went to bed. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, just gradual integration of lives that had been separate. Mia asked questions, of course. Why was Olivia here so much? Was she Daddy's girlfriend? Were they going to get married and have a wedding like in the movies? Ethan answered honestly. Olivia was his friend, a good friend, someone who made him happy. And maybe someday there would be more to say. But for now, that was enough. One Saturday in October, 6 months after the night Ethan met Olivia in Derek's hallway, they took Mia to the aquarium. Olivia had bought tickets weeks ago, planning around Ethan's work schedule and Mia's preschool commitments, treating it like the major operation it was. Mia was fascinated by the sharks, terrified by the jellyfish, and convinced that one of the sea turtles was personally waving at her. They spent 4 hours wandering through exhibits, eating overpriced food court pizza, being aggressively normal. On the way home, Mia fell asleep in the car, and Olivia and Ethan sat in comfortable silence, watching Brooklyn roll past the windows. Can I tell you something? Olivia said. Sure. When Marcus was blackmailing me, when everything felt like it was falling apart, I kept thinking, this is what I deserve. For building my whole life around work and success and not letting anyone in. Like the universe was punishing me for being too closed off. That's not how the universe works. I know, but that's what it felt like. She looked at him. And then you helped me, for no reason except that you could. And I realized, maybe I didn't deserve the blackmail. But maybe I did deserve someone showing up when things got bad. Everyone deserves that. Not everyone gets it, though. Ethan thought about Sarah, about the months of watching her die while doctors tried treatments that didn't work and made promises they couldn't keep. About how few people had actually shown up when things got bad, and how much he'd learned about who was real and who was just performance. No, he agreed. Not everyone gets it. They got back to the loft, and Ethan carried Mia inside, put her to bed still in her clothes because she was too deeply asleep to wake. Olivia helped him straighten up the living room, putting away toys and picking up the scattered debris of a 4-year-old's existence. I should go, she said. Let you have your evening. Or you could stay. Yeah? Yeah. He moved closer. We've been doing this for 6 months, taking it slow, being careful, and that's been good. But maybe we don't have to be quite so careful anymore. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to keep building a small life. I want to build a real one. With you, if you want that. Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was the same smile from the coffee shop 6 months ago, equal parts relief and possibility. I want that. They kissed in his warehouse loft while the city hummed outside and Mia slept peacefully in the next room. It wasn't cinematic or perfect. It was just real. Two people who'd survived separate disasters deciding they were tired of surviving alone. Later, lying in bed while Olivia slept beside him, Ethan thought about everything that had changed. 6 months ago, he'd been a widow raising a daughter and fixing computers and pretending that was enough. Now he was still those things, but he was also something else. Someone who'd fought for something bigger than himself. Someone who'd taken risks that mattered. Someone who'd let another person in despite every instinct that said walls were safer than windows. He still didn't know if it would last. Still didn't know if the relationship with Olivia would survive the stress of blending their complicated lives. Still didn't know if he was doing any of this right or just improvising wildly and hoping for the best. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was better than sleepwalking. A year after the night in Derek's hallway, Ethan and Olivia got married in a small ceremony in Prospect Park with 40 people who actually mattered and nobody who was there for appearances. Mia was the flower girl and took her job so seriously that she walked down the aisle slower than everyone else combined, carefully dropping each petal in exactly the right spot. Ethan's mother cried. Derek gave a speech about how Ethan had helped him fix his computer and accidentally found a wife, which got laughs even though it wasn't entirely accurate. Olivia's parents flew in from California and were politely confused about how their daughter had ended up with a Brooklyn security specialist who lived in a warehouse. But none of that mattered. What mattered was Ethan standing at an altar he'd never expected to stand at again, watching Olivia walk toward him, thinking about how strange life was. How you could spend years building walls and routines and small, safe spaces, and then one night you open a door and everything changes. The vows were simple. The reception was in a restaurant in Park Slope. The whole thing was over by 8 p.m. because Mia needed to get to bed, and everyone was too tired for late-night dancing. Perfectly imperfect. That night, after Mia was asleep and the babysitter had left and they were finally alone, Olivia and Ethan sat on the couch in the loft and didn't talk for a while. Just existed in the same space, exhausted and happy and uncertain about everything except that they'd made the right choice. "You know what's weird?" Olivia said finally. "What?" "A year ago I was being blackmailed by my ex-boyfriend and my company was about to collapse. And now I'm married to the guy who helped me fix it. That's a wild year." "It's been a wild year," Ethan agreed. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't opened Derek's door that night? If you just stayed inside and fixed the computer and gone home?" "Sometimes, but not in a way that makes me wish things were different." "Me either." She leaned against him. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong, or for this to turn out to be too good to be true. That's just leftover trauma talking. Marcus is gone. The merger succeeded. We're happy. Sometimes things actually work out." "Do they, though?" "Sometimes. Not always. But sometimes." He kissed the top of her head. "And when they don't work out, we figure it out together instead of separately. That's the whole point." They sat in comfortable silence while the city moved outside their windows. Somewhere in Brooklyn, other people were living their own complicated lives, dealing with their own disasters and victories and the thousand small moments that made up existence. And Ethan realized, sitting there with his wife on their wedding night in a warehouse loft with his sleeping daughter in the next room, that this was what he'd been looking for all along. Not perfection, not safety, just connection. Just the knowledge that when the next terrible thing happened, because terrible things always happened eventually, he wouldn't face it alone. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Because here's what Ethan had learned over the past year, what Olivia had learned, what maybe everyone learns if they pay attention. Security doesn't come from walls or money or control. It comes from finding someone who sees you clearly, sees your fears and your failures and your desperate attempts to hold everything together, and decides to stay anyway. It comes from building something real with another imperfect person, and trusting that even when things fall apart, you'll figure out how to put them back together. Not smoothly, not perfectly, but together. And in the end, together was the only thing that actually mattered.